I stood at the pulpit, my hands gripping the worn wooden edges as I looked out at my congregation. The late September sunlight streamed through the stained glass, painting everyone in hues of blue and gold. Forgiveness isn't just something we give to others, I said, my voice carrying through the small church. It's something we must first give ourselves. My words echoed against the walls as 40 pairs of eyes stared back at me. I'd been preaching about forgiveness for weeks now, but honestly, I was the one who couldn't seem to grasp it. At 38, Reverend Violet Bell of Overland Park's Unity Faith Church was the pillar of spiritual guidance to many, yet privately drowning in a loneliness I couldn't shake. After service, Sister Margaret touched my arm. "Beautiful sermon, Reverend. Speaking from experience?" I forced a smile. "Aren't we always?" The truth was more complicated. While my congregation saw a confident blonde woman with steady blue eyes and unwavering faith, I saw someone who'd spent her life following rules that left her hollow inside. "Remember, boxing at 4, my assistant called as I gathered my notes. "Right, boxing. My therapist's idea, something about channeling aggression and finding balance. 3 months in, and the only thing I'd found was muscle soreness, and the realization that I had a decent right hook. The gym smelled like sweat and disinfectant when I arrived. I changed quickly, wrapping my hands with practiced precision before heading to the training area. "Fresh meat today," Coach Dan announced, nodding toward the door. She sauntered in like she owned the place, all attitude wrapped in black workout gear. Fiery red hair pulled into a messy ponytail, green eyes scanning the room with obvious disdain. I recognized her immediately, Riley Gray, the rock singer whose music I pretended not to listen to on lonely nights. "This is stupid," she muttered to Coach Dan. "Marcus is overreacting. Your manager pays me to train you, not argue. Pair up with Violet for sparring." Our eyes met, and something electric shot through me. Recognition? Impossible. "You're kidding," Riley said, looking me over. "The church lady?" I bristled. "Oh, I have a name." "Fine, Reverend. Show me what you got." We circled each other awkwardly. Riley clearly had no experience, dropping her guard constantly. I kept my movements restrained, throwing light jabs. "Don't patronize me," she snapped. Hit like you mean it." Something about her tone triggered something primal in me. The next time she dropped her guard, I didn't hold back. My right hook connected with her jaw, not hard enough to really hurt, but enough to send her stumbling. The gym went silent. Riley touched her jaw, eyes wide with surprise. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. "Damn, Reverend, didn't see that coming." She grinned, a trickle of blood at the corner of her mouth. "Then guess there's more to you than prayers and hymns." I should have apologized, should have been mortified. Instead, I felt more alive than I had in years. "There's a lot about me you don't know." "Well," she said, stepping back into fighting stance with newfound respect in her eyes, "I think I might enjoy finding out." And just like that, I knew my carefully ordered life was about to be upended by a red-headed rocker with a bloody lip and a smile that felt dangerously like destiny. 3 weeks into our training partnership, and Riley still hadn't let me live down that first punch. "Come on, holy roller. Show me that righteous right hook again," she taunted, dancing around me on the mat. I rolled my eyes but couldn't help smiling. "You know my name is Violet. And you know I don't care." Her green eyes sparkled with mischief. She threw a lazy jab that I easily dodged. We'd fallen into an unexpected rhythm. 3 days a week, we'd spar, and she'd probe my life with questions that veered between annoying and oddly perceptive. "So what's the deal? No drinking, no dancing, no sex?" Riley asked mid-combination. "How do you not lose your mind?" I landed a solid body shot that made her grunt. "My faith isn't about restrictions. It's about purpose. Seems lonely." She wiped sweat from her brow. "When's the last time you got laid, Reverend?" "That's inappropriate," I said, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. "Your blush says it's been too long." She winked, then stepped back as Coach Dan called time. I grabbed my water bottle, trying to ignore how perceptive her comment had been. 4 years since my last relationship. A fellow seminary student who couldn't handle my dedication to the church. Riley dropped down beside me on the bench. "You're stronger than you look. Those arms aren't just for holding Bibles." I found myself studying her, the way sweat made her skin glow, how her red hair curled wildly at her temples. Something about her fascinated me. Maybe it was the freedom she embodied, so different from my measured existence. "Why do you care so much about my personal life?" I asked. Riley shrugged. "You're an enigma. Hot blonde who could be dating anyone, choosing to live like a nun. It's interesting." "I'm not living like a—" I stopped myself. "My life fulfills me." "Does it?" She leaned closer, her scent, sweat mixed with something citrusy, surprisingly intoxicating. "Because sometimes I catch you looking at me like you're starving." I stood abruptly. "We should get back to training." The rest of our session was intense, both of us pushing harder than necessary. When coach called the final time, we were both breathing heavily, something unspoken hanging between us. In the locker room, I changed quickly, avoiding looking at Riley. As I pulled my shirt over my head, I heard her sharp intake of breath. "What happened there?" Her fingers brushed my back, where an old scar ran across my shoulder blade. I froze at her touch. "Car accident. College. Must have been bad." Her fingers lingered, warm against my skin. It was. I turned, suddenly aware of how close we were. "I nearly died." Something shifted in her expression, the perpetual amusement replaced by genuine concern. "Is that why you turned to religion, near-death experience and all that?" "Partly." I met her gaze. It made me realize I wanted my life to matter. "And mine doesn't?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." But she wasn't angry. Instead, she reached up and tucked a strand of my hair behind my ear, her touch sending a jolt through me. "We just have different definitions of what matters." Before I could respond, she leaned forward and pressed her lips softly against my cheek, dangerously close to the corner of my mouth. It wasn't quite a kiss, but it wasn't innocent either. "See you Wednesday, Violet," she whispered, using my name for the first time. She left me standing there, fingers touching the spot where her lips had been, wondering how someone so at odds with everything I believed could feel so inexplicably right. Sunday morning came with a clarity that only dawn brings. I stood before my closet, selecting my pastoral robe with practiced care. The almost kiss in the locker room had haunted me all week. I'd prayed about it, meditated on it, and still found myself reliving that moment when Riley's lips brushed my cheek. The church filled as it always did. Mrs. Henderson with her extravagant hats. The Wilson family perpetually 7 minutes late. The familiar faces that had come to feel like family over the years. "Let us reflect on Corinthians," I began, my voice steady despite my distracted thoughts. "Faith, hope, and love abide." A movement at the back caught my eye. Someone slipping in late, taking a seat in the last pew. Red hair caught the light from the stained glass windows. "Riley." My words faltered mid-sentence. The congregation noticed, a few heads turning to follow my gaze. I cleared my throat, forcing myself back to the present. "Sorry," I said with an apologetic smile. "As I was saying..." But my rhythm was broken. Riley sat there, dressed in black jeans and a surprisingly modest gray sweater, watching me intently. Not smirking or challenging, just watching. For the first time in 8 years of preaching, I lost my place twice more. I cut the sermon short, blushing like a schoolgirl when I invited everyone to coffee hour in the social hall. "Lovely service, Reverend Bell," Mrs. Henderson said afterward. "Though you seemed a bit distracted today." "Just feeling a bit under the weather," I lied, my eyes scanning the room for Riley. I found her by the coffee urn, looking amusingly out of place among the church elders. When our eyes met, she raised her styrofoam cup in a small salute. "Never thought I'd see you here," I said, approaching her. "Wanted to see what you're like in your natural habitat." She sipped her coffee, grimacing. "This is terrible, by the way. Church coffee is notoriously bad. It's in the Bible somewhere." She laughed, and the sound warmed something inside me. "You're different here. More authoritative. And you're different too. I don't think I've ever seen you without some kind of band t-shirt. Didn't want to give your congregation collective heart failure on my first visit." Her eyes held mine. "You were good up there. I mean, I don't buy most of it, but you believe it. That counts for something." We found ourselves walking outside, away from the curious eyes of my parishioners. "Why did you come, Riley?" "Really?" She shrugged, kicking at a pebble on the sidewalk. "Been thinking about you. Wanted to understand what makes you tick." We sat on a bench under the old oak tree in the churchyard. For nearly an hour we talked, really talked. without the pretense of our usual banter. I learned she grew up in foster care, that music saved her when nothing else could. She listened as I explained how faith had given me purpose after the accident that nearly claimed my life. We're not so different, I said finally, both dedicated to something bigger than ourselves. Except I curse and drink and sleep around, she added with a grin. Minor details. I smiled back. As the sun climbed higher, she checked her watch. I should go. Rehearsal for Friday's show. The one at the Blackbird? Yeah. She stood, hesitating. You should come. Probably not your scene, but... I'd like that, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Really? Her face lit up. Really? She started to walk away, then turned back. Fair warning, Reverend. I'm not the same person on stage. I'm... Roar. Don't come if you're not ready to see that side of me. As I watched her leave, a voice inside whispered that I was playing with fire. My attraction to Riley wasn't just inappropriate, it challenged everything I thought I knew about myself. But another voice, quieter but growing stronger, wondered if perhaps this was exactly what my carefully constructed life had been missing. That night, I lay awake, staring at the concert ticket on my nightstand, terrified and exhilarated by the woman who'd somehow slipped past all my defenses, and the decision I knew I'd already made. The Blackbird Lounge vibrated with anticipation. I stood at the back, feeling conspicuously out of place in my modest black dress, the edgiest thing I owned. Around me, bodies pressed together, most adorned with tattoos, piercings, and band merchandise. I'd never felt more like a pastor in my life. First time? A bartender slid a water toward me. That obvious? You haven't blinked in 5 minutes. He grinned. Friend performing? Before I could answer, the lights dimmed. The crowd surged forward as Riley and her band took the stage. I nearly dropped my glass. She was transformed. Gone was any trace of the woman who'd sat quietly in my church. This Riley wore torn jeans and a sleeveless top that revealed tattooed arms. Her red hair was wild, her eyes rimmed with dark makeup. When she gripped the microphone, the audience erupted. We're gray matter. Let's make some noise. The first chord hit me physically, a wall of sound that vibrated through my chest. Riley's voice, raw and powerful, filled every corner of the venue. I stood transfixed as she owned the stage, prowling from one end to the other, every movement charged with energy. Her lyrics surprised me, not the shallow, hedonistic themes I'd expected, but poetry about loneliness, searching, and fleeting connections. She sang about empty hotel rooms and crowded bars where everyone was alone together, about chasing a feeling that remained just out of reach. During her third song, her eyes found mine in the crowd. A flicker of recognition, then a slow smile spread across her face. She didn't break eye contact through the entire chorus, singing directly to me about finding unexpected light in darkness. I couldn't look away. Something primal and unfamiliar stirred inside me, a hunger I'd never allowed myself to acknowledge. After the set, a security guard approached. Riley wants you backstage. I followed him through a maze of corridors into a small green room. Riley stood alone, toweling sweat from her neck, her stage persona still radiating from her. You came. She sounded genuinely surprised. I said I would. And? Verdict from the woman of God? You're incredible up there, I admitted. It's like watching someone channel pure emotion. She laughed. Not exactly the response I expected. What did you expect? Judgment, disappointment, pray for my soul kind of stuff. I moved closer. You don't give me enough credit. Maybe not. Her expression softened. Wait here. I want to show you something. The room emptied as the band packed up. Riley returned with an acoustic guitar, gesturing for me to sit beside her on a worn leather couch. I never play this for anyone, she said, suddenly vulnerable. It's not finished. Her fingers found the strings, and she began to play a melody unlike anything she'd performed on stage. Haunting, intimate. When she sang, her voice was stripped of its rock edge, revealing something tender underneath. The song was about searching for someone she'd never met but somehow recognized. About feeling pieces of herself scattered across time, like she'd been born incomplete and was waiting to be found. Tears filled my eyes. I knew that feeling. I'd lived with that emptiness my entire life. Riley, I whispered when she finished. That was too much? No. It was like you wrote it from inside my head. She set the guitar aside, her hand finding mine in the dim light. Since we met, I've had this crazy feeling like I've known you before, like we're connected somehow. I feel it too, I confessed. I don't know who moved first. One moment we were looking at each other, the next her lips were on mine. The kiss started gentle but quickly became urgent, years of my carefully constructed restraint crumbling against her touch. Her hands tangled in my hair as mine found her waist. When we finally broke apart, breathless, the stage lights had been dimmed to a single spotlight that cast us in a soft glow. In that moment, I knew my life had irrevocably changed course, and I couldn't bring myself to care. The dreams started 3 nights after our kiss. Vivid, disorienting dreams where I wasn't myself, or rather, I was myself but in another time, another body. I saw Riley dressed in rough-spun clothes, singing in a dimly lit tavern while sailors roared around her. I felt the weight of men's clothing on my own body, the binding around my chest, the secret we shared in stolen moments. I woke each morning drenched in sweat, the images fading but the emotions lingering, fear, passion, and an overwhelming sense of déjà vu. "You look terrible," Riley said bluntly when we met for coffee. 2 weeks had passed since the concert, and we'd been cautiously navigating whatever this was between us. Not sleeping? Just strange dreams. I stirred my latte absently. "You're in them." She raised an eyebrow. "Dirty dreams about me, Reverend?" I'm flattered. "Not like that." I hesitated. "They feel like memories from another time." Instead of laughing, Riley went still. "What kind of memories?" I told her about the tavern, about myself dressed as a sailor, about the furtive touches exchanged when no one was looking. Her face paled. "It's probably just anxiety about—" I gestured vaguely between us. "This. Maybe." But she seemed unconvinced. That afternoon, I found myself researching past life regression therapy. The rational part of me dismissed it as pseudoscience, but something deeper pushed me forward. I found Dr. Brianna Foster's office in a quiet part of Overland Park, her credentials impressive despite her unconventional specialty. "I don't usually do this," I told her as I settled into the comfortable chair in her office 3 days later. "My faith doesn't exactly embrace reincarnation." Dr. Foster smiled warmly. "Many of my clients come from traditional religious backgrounds. Think of this as exploring your subconscious, not necessarily past lives." "Fair enough." She dimmed the lights, her voice guiding me into a relaxed state. "Focus on your breathing. Let yourself drift deeper. We're going to follow those dreams now, Violet. Where do they take you?" The room faded away. Suddenly, I was on a ship, the deck rolling beneath my feet. I could smell salt air, hear the snap of canvas above. "I'm a sailor," I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "It's 1842. My name is Elizabeth, but everyone calls me Eli. They think I'm a man." "Why are you pretending to be a man?" Dr. Foster's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Women can't go to sea." I bound my chest, cut my hair. "I've been doing it for years." The scene shifted. I was in a portside tavern, the air thick with pipe smoke and unwashed bodies, and there she was, a woman with red hair singing for coins, her green eyes finding mine across the room. "Her name is Rose," I whispered. "She knows my secret." We meet in the storage room behind the tavern. Tears streamed down my face as the memories unfolded. Stolen moments of passion, promises whispered in darkness, plans to escape together to a new life. Then terror, discovery, rough hands pulling us apart, Rose's screams as they dragged her away, the crack of a pistol. I came out of the trance with a gasp, my body shaking uncontrollably. Dr. Foster handed me a glass of water, her expression concerned. "That was intense," she said. "You went very deep." I wiped my face, discovering it wet with tears. It felt real. "The emotions certainly were," she said carefully. "Whether these are actual memories or symbolic representations." "We died," I interrupted. "They killed her because of me, because of us." Dr. Foster made notes. "Would you like to tell me more about the connection between these visions and your current life?" I explained about Riley, about our inexplicable bond, about the dreams that had begun after our first kiss. Dr. Foster listened without judgment. "Regardless of whether you believe in past lives," she said finally, "these images have powerful meaning for you. They might represent unresolved fears about your current relationship, the fear of discovery, of judgment. I nodded, though something inside me knew it was more than symbolic. As I left her office, I felt both lighter and heavier, freed by understanding but burdened by knowledge that would sound insane to anyone else. Except, perhaps, to Riley. Riley sat across from me on my couch, expressions cycling between disbelief and fascination as I recounted my hypnosis session. Outside, rain pattered against the windows, creating a cocoon of intimacy around us. "So you're saying we were lovers in the 1800s? She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "And I was a tavern singer? I know how it sounds." I wrapped my hands around my mug of tea. "Believe me, I'm having a crisis of theology over here." "It's not that I don't believe in something beyond this life," Riley said carefully. "But past lives? Star-crossed lovers finding each other across time? It's a bit much, even for someone who writes emotional ballads." I set my mug down. "There's something else. Something I couldn't explain without sounding insane. Because the rest sounds totally normal? In my vision you had a scar." I reached out, my fingers hovering near her collarbone. "Here, from a bottle fight in the tavern, 3 inches long." Riley went very still. Her fingers moved to the neckline of her shirt, pulling it aside to reveal a thin white scar exactly where I'd indicated. "How did you know about this?" "I didn't." Her face drained of color. "I got this when I was 16. Foster home fight. Never told anyone the details." We stared at each other, the implications hanging between us. "There's more," I continued, emboldened. "You had a song you sang only for me, for her. About a bird that flies over the ocean, always returning to the same shore." Riley's hands began to tremble. "I wrote that song when I was 14. It came to me in a dream. I've never recorded it or played it for anyone." Silence filled the room, broken only by rain and our breathing. "This is crazy." She stood abruptly, pacing. "What are we supposed to do with this information?" "You could try the hypnosis," I suggested. "See if you experience the same memories." "And if I do?" She turned to me, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen her. "What then?" "Then we figure it out together." 3 days later, Riley emerged from Dr. Foster's office looking shaken. I'd waited in the reception area, nervously thumbing through magazines without reading a word. "Well?" I asked as we walked to my car. "It was you," she said simply. "I saw you dressed as a sailor. I knew your secret. We made plans to run away to Canada." Her voice cracked. "I watched you die trying to save me." I pulled over a few blocks later, neither of us able to maintain the pretense of normal conversation. In a quiet neighborhood park, we sat side by side on a swing set. "And see, we're punished," she said finally. "For loving each other. Maybe this is our second chance." I reached for her hand. Riley's fingers intertwined with mine. "I'm not the spiritual one here, but this explains why I felt drawn to you from the moment we met. Like you were a piece of me I'd lost." We moved toward each other like magnets, her lips finding mine with familiar urgency. The kiss deepened, her hands tangling in my hair as mine slid beneath her jacket. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathing hard. "Come home with me," she whispered against my lips. Her apartment reflected her perfectly, chaotic but intentional, album covers and musical instruments sharing space with antique furniture and unexpected art pieces. But I barely registered the details as we stumbled toward her bedroom, hands exploring with the desperation of souls reunited. What followed was both discovery and remembrance, her body simultaneously new and familiar beneath my touch, her sighs music I'd waited lifetimes to hear again. When she moved above me, red hair falling like a curtain around our faces, I felt the boundaries of time dissolve entirely. "I found you," she whispered against my skin. "After all this time." "We found each other," I corrected, pulling her closer. Later, watching her sleep in the soft light of dawn, I understood that some connections transcend explanation, and perhaps even faith itself. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a formal email requesting my presence at an emergency church council meeting. I read it on my phone while still in Riley's bed, her arm draped possessively across my waist. "Bad news?" she murmured, pressing a kiss against my shoulder. "Just church politics," I lied, not wanting to disturb our bubble of happiness. 3 weeks had passed since our shared revelation. 3 weeks of discovery, passion, and a connection that felt both brand new and ancient. The council meeting was as grim as I'd expected. Elder Richardson, a man who'd known me since I first arrived at Unity Faith, couldn't quite meet my eyes. Reverend Bell, concerns have been raised about your association with Riley Gray. The room felt suddenly airless. My association? Mrs. Henderson cleared her throat. You were seen outside her concert venue and leaving her apartment building, early morning hours. I wasn't aware my personal friendships were subject to council approval, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Friendships, perhaps not. Elder Peterson's voice was cold. Romantic entanglements with women, however, directly contradict our church's doctrinal position. The words hit me like physical blows, not because I was surprised, I'd known this was coming, but because hearing them spoken aloud made the conflict I'd been avoiding impossible to ignore. We've always valued your leadership, Mrs. Henderson added, her tone softening slightly. But this behavior cannot continue if you wish to remain as our pastor. I left the church in a daze, driving aimlessly for hours before ending up at Riley's rehearsal space. I sat in the car watching through the windows as she worked with her band, so vibrant and alive in her element. My phone buzzed, another email. Riley's manager had sent her a similar warning. Fans had posted photos of us together, speculation was growing, and her label was concerned about alienating her conservative fan base before the album release. When Riley spotted my car and came outside, her smile faded at the sight of my expression. They know, I said simply. Her jaw tightened. Mine too. Marcus just gave me the image concerns talk. We sat on the hood of my car, the evening air cool against our skin. This feels familiar, Riley said bitterly. Different century, same bullshit. I stared at the stars emerging above us. Maybe some patterns are destined to repeat. No. She grabbed my hand fiercely. We don't let them separate us this time, not again. But over the next week, the pressure mounted. My inbox filled with messages from concerned parishioners. Riley received thinly veiled threats from her label about contract obligations. We tried to be more discreet, meeting at odd hours, avoiding public places, but the secrecy felt like a betrayal of everything we'd discovered together. I hate this, Riley said one night, pacing my living room. Hiding like we're doing something wrong. It's exactly what happened before. It's different now, I insisted. No one's going to hurt us. Aren't they? She gestured at my phone, which hadn't stopped buzzing with messages from church elders. They're just using different weapons. The breaking point came Sunday morning. I arrived at church to find the council had invited a guest pastor to deliver the sermon without informing me. The topic? Maintaining doctrinal purity in times of cultural confusion. I sat in the front pew, face burning as the visiting minister spoke about loving the sinner while rejecting the sin. Several parishioners cast sympathetic glances my way. Others pointedly avoided looking at me at all. That same evening, Riley called in tears. Her label had shelved her album's release date indefinitely, citing marketing strategy reconsideration. They're punishing me, she said, voice breaking. All because someone took pictures of us holding hands. We met at a 24-hour diner on the edge of town, both of us exhausted and heartsick. As we huddled in a corner booth, I was struck by the cruel symmetry. Centuries later, still hiding our love in shadows. I won't let them take you from me again, Riley whispered, gripping my hands across the table. Not in this lifetime. I spent the entire night preparing my sermon, each word carefully chosen. By dawn, I knew what I had to do. This would either be my redemption or my final address as pastor of Unity Faith Church. The sanctuary filled as usual, though I noticed more curious faces than regulars. News of the controversy had apparently spread beyond our congregation. The council members sat in the front row, their expressions a mix of concern and resolution. When I took the pulpit, my hands weren't shaking. For the first time in weeks, I felt completely certain. Today, I want to talk about love, I began. Not the sanitized version we often discuss in these walls, but love in its rawest, most authentic form. The room went still. I could feel the tension building with each word. For years, I've spoken about God's love while denying myself the experience of human love. I convinced myself that sacrifice was noble, that loneliness was my cross to bear. I paused, meeting the eyes of those who'd questioned me. I was wrong. Elder Richardson shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Henderson's lips pressed into a thin line. 2,000 years ago, Jesus challenged the religious authorities of his day by choosing love over dogma, inclusion over judgment. Yet here we stand, still building walls instead of bridges. My voice strengthened. I've found love in an unexpected place with an extraordinary woman. A love that feels divinely ordained. Gasps rippled through the congregation. A few people stood and walked out, but others, more than I expected, leaned forward, listening intently. You can remove me from this pulpit, you can take my collar, but you cannot convince me that the love I've found is anything but sacred. Because love, authentic, brave love, is always holy work. The aftermath was exactly what I'd expected. Half the council demanded my immediate resignation. The other half pleaded for compromise. In the end, I handed over my keys and office access card, walking away from the only career I'd ever known. But I walked towards something too. Riley faced her own reckoning that same day. She'd scheduled an impromptu acoustic set at a small coffee shop. No promotion, just an announcement on social media an hour before. When I arrived, the place was packed, people spilling onto the sidewalk. She sat on a wooden stool, just her and her guitar. When she saw me enter, her face lit up. "This song is new," she said into the microphone. "It's called Lifetimes, and it's for someone who taught me that some connections are worth fighting for." The melody started soft but built with each verse, a story of souls finding each other across time, refusing to be separated by fear or convention. By the final chorus, tears streamed down my face. Around me, strangers were equally moved, swaying with closed eyes or holding loved ones closer. Her manager cornered her afterward, furious about her ignoring the label's directive to cool it with the gay stuff. Riley handed him her contract termination letter in response. "They can't stop the album release," she told me later as we drove toward the outskirts of town. "I own the rights to my music. They just control distribution. What will you do? Release it independently. Build a new audience. One that wants authenticity, not some manufactured image." She glanced at me. "What about you?" "I have some savings, and apparently an offer to write a book about progressive Christianity." I laughed, still surprised by the email I'd received hours after my sermon. "Where are we going exactly?" "My friend's cabin. He's touring Europe for a month." She reached for my hand. I thought we needed time away from everyone, to figure out what comes next. The cabin appeared through pine trees, rustic and secluded. Inside, a stone fireplace dominated the main room, with wide windows overlooking a lake that reflected the moonlight. That night, we shed more than our clothes. I let go of the guilt that had shadowed me for weeks. Riley released her anger at those who'd tried to control her music and her heart. Our bodies moved together with a freedom born of absolute certainty, healing wounds from both this life and our last. "No hiding anymore," she whispered against my skin. "Not in this lifetime." "No hiding," I promised, pulling her closer. "This time, we write our own ending." 6 months passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. Spring had bloomed into summer and was now fading into a golden autumn. I stood at the back of a converted warehouse space, watching as people filed in, some familiar faces from my former congregation, others with the unmistakable look of Riley's fans, and many I didn't recognize at all. "Nervous?" Riley appeared beside me, slipping her hand into mine. "A little," I admitted. "This is different." "Different good?" I smiled. "Different perfect." The space we'd named Harmony Center was our joint creation, not quite a church, not quite a music venue, but something uniquely ours. Exposed brick walls were adorned with inspiring quotes from spiritual leaders alongside music legends. Comfortable chairs formed a semicircle rather than rigid pews. A small stage held both Riley's instruments and a simple podium. 5 minutes, our assistant called, hurrying past with a stack of program booklets. Riley kissed my cheek before heading backstage. I took a deep breath and moved toward the entrance to greet arrivals. "Violet." Mrs. Henderson embraced me warmly. "The place looks wonderful." "Thank you for coming," I said, genuinely touched. She'd been among the first to reach out after my departure, apologizing for her role in the church council's decision. "Wouldn't miss it," she replied. "What you're building here, it's needed." More people arrived, former parishioners seeking a more inclusive spiritual community, music lovers drawn by Riley's underground success, and those who'd heard about our unique therapy program combining spiritual guidance and musical expression. Riley's independent album Lifetimes had become something of a sleeper hit, connecting especially with people who felt marginalized by traditional religions yet craved spiritual connection. Meanwhile, my book Faith Without Fences had found its audience despite, or perhaps because of, the controversy surrounding my departure from conventional ministry. Together, we'd created something neither of us could have imagined separately. As the room filled, I took my place on stage. The lights dimmed, and I welcomed everyone to our weekly gathering. Riley joined me, her guitar slung across her body. Today we're exploring healing across time, I began. How the wounds we carry, whether from this life or perhaps beyond, can be transformed when met with compassion and understanding. Riley began to play softly as I spoke, her music weaving between my words. We'd perfected this dance over months of practice, her melodies enhancing my message, my words giving deeper context to her songs. Afterward, people lingered, forming small discussion groups or signing up for our music therapy sessions. Dr. Foster, now a regular collaborator in our work, facilitated a corner where people could explore their own spiritual questions. We did it, Riley said as we finally locked up for the night. Built something together that no one can take away. We walked hand in hand to our apartment just blocks away. The evening was clear, stars emerging above the city lights. Look, Riley pointed upward. Meteor shower starting? We stopped on the rooftop garden of our building, watching as streaks of light painted the sky. In the 6 months since we'd left our former lives, we'd settled into a rhythm that felt both revolutionary and perfectly natural. I have something for you, Riley said, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out a small wooden box. Not exactly traditional, but then, neither are we. Inside were 2 simple silver bands. Not legally binding in Kansas, not yet, but real to us. My throat tightened with emotion. When? Now. Here. She gestured to the star-filled sky, with the universe as our witness. Under the meteor shower, we exchanged simple vows, promises to honor the connection that had survived across centuries, to protect what we'd found in each other, to never again hide our love in shadows. As Riley slid the ring onto my finger, I felt a sense of completion that transcended the moment, as if a circle begun long ago had finally closed. In every lifetime, Riley whispered, I will always find you. And I'll always remember, I promised, pulling her close as another meteor streaked overhead, sealing our vows with a kiss that felt both like an ending and a beginning. Some love stories are written in the stars. Ours, it seemed, was written across time itself.